like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. All individuals entering city-operated facilities, including City Hall, are required to wear a non-medical face mask. Those at the table are not required to wear masks while sitting, as long as they're distanced 6 feet from anyone else. Once you leave your seat at the table, you must put your mask back on. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, we're requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. My name is Lynn Nesbitt. I'll be chairing the panel today. With me on the panel are Marcel Larondo to my left and Richard Whitbread to his left. Our recording secretary is Belen Rojo, and our assessor is Stephen Lobenstein. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Use of cell phones is not permitted except by approval by the chair. And if you have your cell phone on, please turn it to silent. Thank you.
Please state your full name.
David Michael Vandergris.
And you affirm the evidence about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome here. We're dealing with application to hear or for the assessed value of the property today. Okay, could you start by reading in the information on the property, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. The roll number for this property is 140929010. The owner is the city of Winnipeg, but there is a lease in place for the applicant. Actually, investment limited. So we have a reference period of April 1st, 2018. The roll years for 2021. Assessed value is 200. Property description is the land area is 17,000 square feet. The zoning is 10-2 general manufacturing. So clicking on page 3, you can see the location of the subject property. It's just behind Aaron. So, and my next page on page 4, you can get an overhead view of the property. So it's that strip of land behind the building there that's being used out. The zoning, as mentioned before, is N2 for light manufacturing process, surface storage, wholesale, and distribution operations, limited outdoor operation storage. That would be the case for this property if we put the outdoor operation basically lease terms, they are not able to develop on the property, so they don't. So going forward, on page 5, looking down at the cost report, you see we have a model rate of $13.30 a square foot applied to the 17,220 square feet. We get a land value of $229,000. On page 5 are the rent comparables. These would be sales similar in size to the subject property. Sold within fairly close to the reference period. So we can see that the comparables are again Archibald, Spears, Eagle, and Aaron Street. They all have similar areas, 7,006 square feet. Archibald is 8,700 square feet. Spears is 10,600. Bugle has 20,230 square feet, and Aaron is as large as 24,000. They have various zoning now. They have M3 to M1. And the sale prices per square foot range from $10.14 a square foot for 48 squares, all the way up to $16.05 per Archibald. It should be noted that none of these properties are city owners, have city leases involved in them, which is property. So going forward on page 6, you can see comparable property number 1, overhead square parcel of land. Comparable 2, lower down on page 6. And it looks like page 7 has the other 2 comparables, comparable 3. So when we look at the comparables, we feel the model rent of $13.50 there, and the land value of $229,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lobenstein. Mr. Vanderwees, do you have any questions of the assessor's presentation?
Just a couple. Of all of the, did you visit the site?
I have not visited.
Okay. As the subject property does not front onto any streets.
That is correct. Subject property.
There is no access to the property, period, except for not even with the future bike path. I believe it skirts the property. Anyways.
The majority of the property seems to be behind the building. It seems like there is a small bit of frontage onto the lot,
But that frontage on Watt is at the top of a 12-foot underpass.
Okay.
Okay, so access to this property doesn't exist unless it goes through 19 Watt Street or comes from the railway. Number 2, the comparables, all of your comparables chosen are not landlocked parcels.
No, they're definitely not.
They all have frontage onto major roads, just similar to the subject, but are developable. There's buildings on some of them already that I know of. Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting the PPD appraiser. And she was on site. I forget her name. I think it was Lydia, if I'm not mistaken. And was explaining to me.
Do you have a question that you're
No.
asking of is
No.
this part of your evidence that you'd like to present?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just hold off on that. You can tell us about that. Do you have any more questions for the assessor? Okay. Okay. Mr. Laurando, do you have any questions for the assessor?
This is, the city's holding this for street allowance or bike path or what?
Well, there is a fire station right beside the property. I think that's kind of the jurisdiction falls under. I don't know the reason why they're holding.
Fire station next to it. Where would that be?
North.
If you look on page 4, you see the blue roof. It's just
Blue roof, that's the fire station?
beside it.
Hmm?
The building beside it, the parking lot.
Okay,
The building beside it.
so north.
So it has that fire station? Oh, north of it, up there. But that's on what, isn't it? Or it uses the underpass?
That's on the lot. And
It doesn't use this piece of land for anything for that.
believe it or not, looking into it, it commented that that's on property in essence.
Yeah, I guess it abuts it. The city owns that piece up there. It's not contiguous with the other piece down here. How long has this been rented out? How many years?
My understanding from conversation was that it had been rented out for previous one. There's currently 5-year first.
June what?
June 1st, 2020.
Yeah.
So a little bit is reference, but it was rented out for this for the period of time I'm not.
I don't have that information. I'm done.
Mr. Whitman?
So I understand the model would have calculated this value.
This is a model calculator.
And when the model does that, does it take the comparables you've identified here?
It wouldn't take those things into account.
So all nice square rectangular pieces of property with road access, et cetera, et cetera. You can't think, can it, when it sees something like this?
We can put in some, basically, well, not in that sense, like it'll take certain factors like location, square footage, shape is an option there, but it's not a big factor. It's a model.
The assessor would actually have to input those variables, correct? Okay, and that wasn't done to your knowledge here?
For this particular property?
Yeah.
It would have put in, there probably would have been access put in, like core access put in, and basically an odd shape put in, so.
But you don't know that anyway. Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lovenstein, is this property, if it weren't for the lease, developable?
It would be a very difficult property to develop.
Mhm.
So that would be with odd shape and a button side there. I like to think that all property or all land at some level is developable, but this one, because of the lease, it's definitely not.
Because of the lease, it's not, but were it not for the lease, do you think it could be developed?
It could be, but it would be difficult.
It would be something fairly specific, I would think. It's pretty. The rest of your comparables, they all seem to be a fairly regular
Yeah.
shape.
I look more at the size, shape, like I said, not a lot of shape. Market.
And so the rate per square foot on this property on the subject is $13.30?
Yeah.
So it'd be sort of in the middle of all your comparables, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes, of course.
you know, the dimensions, let's say the narrowest and the widest dimension on that lengthy piece of property.
I'll add it.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Vanderbeek, when you're ready, your presentation.
I don't have much to add other than
Sure.
the city of Winnipeg property. There's development people who rent us the land, and it's been rented in excess of 20 years already. And the lease ran out because I just wanted to renew it, but we had to enter a new lease, and it's 5 with 5 renewal. Anyways, that's the details on the lease. The appraiser explained to me how the rental rate is achieved is they do an appraisal. And I believe Lydia was the appraiser with an ACI designation, so she's familiar with this type of property. And she said they take the market value they derive with their appraisal divided by 16, and that's your annual rate, which makes sense because that would be roughly equivalent to a 6% cap rate. Everybody's here familiar with cap rates if you're renting that piece of property. What my friend here hasn't really paid much attention to is that, and it's beyond difficult to develop this property. It would be impossible because you can't access it unless you purchase the fire department out and make a road around the back of it. And the property at its depth, the biggest depth is 33 feet. So it's approximately 300 feet long, and the biggest point is 33 feet deep. It provides us some parking for our property, but that's nothing more. At the end of the day, the rental rate is $2,670 per year. Times 16 is $42,720, which is somewhat different than what the city has proposed. I really haven't, like, other than, I don't know how you get the appraisal done by the city of Winnipeg, because it's the same group here. Somebody should be able to make a phone call and see what was going on over there. And we'd like to see it. And I think everybody in that department is just as capable. So, and it's no offense. I understand the model driven. That's the way things are. And that's where we feel the value should be. It's really can't, other than that, parking for maybe 15 or 20 cars, just don't have much there.
Thank you. Mr. Lobenstein, do you have any questions?
No,
Okay. Mr. Laranda?
You said it was 33 feet wide at its widest point.
yes.
So these lines on this picture are not probably not accurate. Somebody did.
What the
Purple
purple
line
lines?
there, because that doesn't seem to be, that's not computer generated, is that not?
Page,
Yeah, I think it's page 4.
yeah, I mean, it's,
That's the shape.
That's the shape.
Yeah, but from the middle of the building there going out, I believe it's not much more than 30 feet. Same thing with where Elmwood Road is.
Yeah.
I believe that's 33 feet.
Well, this was all originally Elmwood Road all the way through,
Yes.
which never existed. What was the previous rent on this property? Was it
$1,000,
$1,000 a month?
no, a year.
A year.
It was like, because they added 1,600, or 1,600 and they added 1,000, or 1,000, they added 1,600. I can find that out very quickly.
On the new lease, did it say the value of the land?
No, it just gives you the rate. And the appraiser from property development explained to me how they derive the rate by dividing the value by 16, which is like a 6% return on your investment, which would be like, I'm sure my warehouses or a commercial piece of property would generate that.
But you don't pay the tax on this property.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you have to pay the tax on
Yeah.
top of that, on this piece of property.
Yep.
So that 42,000 plus taxes on that extra piece,
No, I pay $2,600 a year plus the taxes,
$2,600 a year.
$2,670 a year
Plus the taxes.
plus the taxes.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
When did they put the value up on this land?
value last cycle, I think, was like 200,000.
208. So he didn't have the same kind of lease before then.
I think you mentioned you only owned it for, I guess last.
No, 20 years has been leased, he said.
Okay, let's find out.
You said you've leased it for 20 years?
The previous owner did.
Well,
I've only owned this property for 18 months, or
Okay.
21 months.
Okay.
And the previous owner didn't challenge this. And I can't say why. So here, previous rent was $1,037 per year plus GST. And it had $1,632 added to it to make it $2,670 even per year plus GST.
I'm sorry, and that was, can you just clarify, that was the previous lease?
The previous was $1,000. This piece of property has not had value for a substantial amount of time. This isn't something that just cropped up as a,
I guess I got one
Is it-
further
is it
question.
crap?
Do you own the land on the other side of it then, to the north?
no, that's CPR.
At CPR,
No.
on the other side of that allowance?
South of it,
Is this some, how do they access it in there?
they have, that's their whole yard. They have a big yard in the CPR.
What's a CPR yard? That
Parts, like this, there's like 3 or 6 tracks in there. Like it's a big operation next door.
But there's some buildings on the other side of the purple line. What's that?
Yeah, on which,
Which
whereabouts?
On
side?
page 4.
On which
Yes.
side, Marcel?
There's 3 semi-trailers.
Yeah.
That was the previous owner had tenants in place for 30 years.
Mhm.
Remember working there in the 80s at a pallet joint, and Johnny Swaluta was welding there at the time and was still, and he was, when he purchased it, he was paying $2.50 a foot gross. So we kicked everybody out and tore that barn down. All of the stuff that was on the site that you see was the tenants that were hoarders. And the lady whose husband passed away and owned the place had no idea how to deal with it. So we have since cleaned it up, and we can't use that because it's railway property. But we rent this off of the city of Winnipeg for the few extra pieces of parking we can get. But it's CP Rail property on the other side, as far as I know. Because they call me about their fence.
I've got no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Levin?
So essentially, you want that property for the few parking spots it gives you.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I hear you earlier say your rent was $5 a square foot, or did I mishear that?
No. No. If it was, it wasn't. If it was, it wasn't for land.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
2,600 thing,
That's correct.
which is barely over $1 a foot, is it? Something
Yeah,
like
about
that.
$1.25 for
$1.25
yeah.
about, okay? And can you tell me how long that piece of land is?
I think it,
You've told me it was 30,
Yeah.
31 feet wide.
yeah, I think it's about 450 feet. But it's really obscure.
I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. And I have no further questions. Thank you very much for coming and making your presentation, and you'll
Thank you.
receive our decision shortly in the mail.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please state your full name. You have done the evidence to represent to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Reimer. Okay.
No, not the license.
Go like this. Go like this. It dries real quick. Hey, my shirt's drying. That's the first thing I'll do.
Oh, no.
That's okay. It's a changed world.
Yes, no kidding.
Get used to it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, we're now going to hear 7 Higgins Avenue. Mr. Lobenstein, whenever you're ready.
7 Higgins Avenue. Assessed value is $1,300. This is construction classes, built frame, interior walls. So, this is an interesting property because we're actually doing this property on cost. It's not an approach. That being said, so I want to first look at some pictures of this property. So if we turn to page 10 of my, just get an idea of what we're looking at for the property. So that's on 7 Higgins. This was inspected by an assessor in March of 2020 for the business assessment hearing. So there is quite a few pictures to go through. So the first picture is show basically the office page 10. You get some exterior photos on page 11. The height of the structure itself. Page 12, you can see where the trucks will enter in and out. Page 13, you can see that there is rail access to the property as well, so they can load goods through rail. Page 14, I actually don't, it shouldn't be in here. This is, it's part of the business, but it's on a different parcel of land. So, I'm stricken this from the record, page 14, 15, and 16. 17, you get, this is the basement of the main building, it's the lab. What they do is they process power here, so they have a small lab. Page 18, you get an idea of more of the basement area. Page 19, you can see some of the upper or the heated area or the electronics that they use in this building. Page 20 is the upper area. Just get an idea of sort of interior upper areas. 22 gives you another idea. Page 23, you can see some bins they have storage. Page 24 is the third floor space, processing. Page 26 is just sort of the 26, 27 shows work processing. 29 again, so we're just get an idea of what this building is sort of like. And page 31 shows where they store some. Okay, so we have an idea of what this property is. Say it's been built over since 1917. Then there's addition in 1941 and 1944. The majority of the building, I would say close to 90% of it was constructed between 1970. So when looking at the cost of the property, you have to do a land valuation as well. So the land for the property is $24,600.
Which page are you on now?
I'm on page 5.
We just have to find it here, this new way of looking at things. Okay,
Actually,
gotcha.
Before I actually get to that, I just want to make a quick note here that on page 5, if you look down to the cost of approach, the parcel summary, we have a total cost of $819,300. Now it's different from what was appealed on the front of $831,300 because there's a difference because when it was inspected, it was determined that the shipping area, the shipping area, which is 3,270 square feet, cannot be used for safety issues. It was used as a storage area, but it's not stable. The area was built in 1944 and we removed it. So that's a portion of the cost of the new value, and a supplementary notice is a so the new value is actually $810,000. Okay. So page 5 again for the land, very top of page 5, we see we have an area of 24,690 square feet. The rate we're applying is $9 for a total land value of $244,000. Now that land value is supported on page 4. You can see the 5 comparables on Archibald, Jarvis, Appearance, Hyde, and range in square footage from 14,323 square feet all the way up to 24,800 square feet. So they're very close to the size of the subject property. Three of the comparables, comparable 3, 4, and 5, are M1 manufacturing comparison, which is the same as the subject property. The other two are M2. And these prices, if you look further down the scale, they range from $7 per square foot for one Jarvis, all the way up to $14 per square foot for one here. Yeah, it's all right. Here is it right there. So turning to my page 7, you can look at the comparables. You can look at a view of them. The first one's on the corner of Archibald. The next one's on the corner of Jarvis and Kenzie, it looks like. The third one is a long, narrow strip just off Desmirons, and the fourth one is up high. It's kind of rectangular shape. And the fifth one's on Aaron Street, a square property that's fronting. That's on page 9. So that's so these values are supporting our land value. Now on to our cost summary. So we have a replacement cost new for this building. So this building was to be replaced new. It would cost $2,731,346, we're saying. But we've also applied a depreciation. The depreciation that we've applied is about 80%. So that would be the minus $2,174,046. So that depreciation then gives us a total replacement cost of $55,300 for the building. There are a few detached structures we valued at $18,000 for a total of $575,300. So then you apply that, or we apply the land value to that to get our $819,300. Cover all bases for this building, what it's done for. So we believe that the value of $831,300 is fair and equitable. Should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reimer, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lodenstein, can you, you wrote or you stated the number, but I couldn't get it fast enough. The shipping area that was removed, what was that area?
It was actually above the shipping area.
Okay.
It was the second floor.
Yep.
So above the shipping area, 3,278 square feet is an area that cannot be used due to safety.
Okay, so it's the 3,278 square feet. And then what, if I understand mathematically, what would have been done to get from the 831,300 that's in review this afternoon down to 819,300, that's the RCNLD for just that area then? Correct. Okay. Okay. Were you aware that as a result of these structural issues, in addition to that area, that 2 significant bins had also been removed?
Not until I read your brief.
Okay. So that's going to be worth a discussion between you and me later. Talk about that for sure. Now the depreciation, I'm on your page 5 now. So the depreciation that the department's applied, I believe that's just strictly age life, based on the age life tables, correct? Okay, and there's been no additional obsolescence factors applied above and beyond the age life tables?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Now then the last couple of questions on the land rates of the departments, the model has kicked out the rate of 90. This is a model rate effectively at 988 a square foot initially, correct? Okay. And then on your page 4, so we can agree that this, the subject is in the Point Douglas area.
Correct.
Okay. None of the sales that you've listed here, of course, are in the Point Douglas area, correct?
No, the closest one would be Jarvis, although
Right.
Desmere and Archibald are fairly close, just across the bridge.
But that's significant. They're across the bridge in Jarvis at Dufferin. And I was going to suggest that very thing, that Dufferin would probably be the, 657 Jarvis would likely be the most comparable in terms of location. All the comparables, save and except number 5, are, I guess 4 and 5 are reasonably close in size, but the remaining comparables are significantly smaller.
They're slightly smaller, yeah.
Well, I'd suggest to you that's more than slightly, because it's 14,000 feet versus 24, so it's not quite half, but it's pretty significant with the first two comps, but that's fine. Madam Chair, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lavanda?
I'm gonna go back to your page 5. It was, let me get there. You said to reconstruct. Are you talking reconstruction of the same type of building? At $2,731,000
Yeah, replacement cost is
of that building, built similarly.
well, that's why we would add on to the depreciation of up to 80%.
Now, that was to come to the 819 that you're at now, right?
That plus the land value
Yeah.
will get us to the 819.
So what was it that you, when you did the other, didn't you do it for a rental value as well at one point? In here?
This has been done in cost for quite some time. This has been done in cost for quite some
Yeah.
time.
I'm trying to see which page is the map on of the property?
The map of the
Is there a map that shows the property here? This property?
property. Don't have a map.
I can offer up my page 2 in my brief if you wanted to look.
You don't think you have one there then?
No, I didn't. I just put in the pictures of the interior property. I don't have an actual overhead shot. Oh, hang on. No. No, I don't have an overhead shot of the property.
I might come back and
Sure.
pass it over for a minute.
Sure. Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, back to you, Marcel.
You don't have any either? Is that little building on the side of it, the office space, I guess they call it, are you allocating anything value on that?
Yeah, we would allocate a spot for the office space as well.
That falls into the total square footage that you were talking about.
Yeah, we have it in here. We have the office space. It was built in 1933.
You? I want to hear from
Okay.
the other side.
Mr. Runner, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So if I could ask board members and Mr. Lovenstein to turn to page 2. Our request this afternoon for this site is to reduce the assessment from 831,300 to 571,000. Street view photo at the bottom of page 2. And then on page 3, Mr. Lauren had asked about the overhead shots and the maps. So that's the two, the aerial views of the subject. As you can see, it's located at the corner of Sutherland Avenue and Higgins in the Point Douglas area, irregular shaped parcel. And obviously there have been quite a number of improvements constructed on it over the years. And Mr. Lovenstein had referred to this as well. So if you turn to page 4, no dispute as to the nature of the asset. It's a flour mill and an elevator, grain elevator and flour mill at the corner of Sutherland and Higgins. So the chart on page 4 lists the various improvements over the years. And actually, Mr. Lovenstein was very, very close. According to our calculations, it would be actually 88% or 87 to 88% that would have been constructed prior to 1978, fully actually well over 60% was constructed prior to 1944. So these certainly are improvements that are on the older side, and that we believe is as far as it goes, to the best of our knowledge from what we've seen, the age life tables, we're not taking issue with it at this stage. There is an element of depreciation I'm going to suggest that would go beyond it to what would amount to additional functional, or you could even view it as economic obsolescence. But as far as the age life tables, as applied to these improvements, we're not going to debate that this afternoon. There is, though, at the bottom of page 4, I mentioned this, there's a substantial negative influence, and Mr. Lovenstein had mentioned the structural issues, and I don't take any issue whatsoever with the area that the department's applied, but a much bigger issue relates to the fact that those structural area issues, I should say, caused or precipitated the removal of 2 of the storage bins on the site, and that reduced storage capacity by 20%. We're suggesting that is a very significant, because of course now the operations, even for this older mill, it's become even somewhat more obsolete because of the reduced storage capacity, and therefore the inefficiencies that would result from that removal of the storage capacity. And that's a factor I'm going to suggest to the board should be reflected in additional depreciation. So turning then to page, let's go straight, please, if we could, to page 7. At the top of page 7, it's assessor's, the heading is assessor's cost valuation for 7 Higgins. So the chart that I've inserted is actually the chart prior to the adjustments made by the department, Mr. Lovenstein, this afternoon. As you can see at the bottom of that chart, the assessed total cost, land and improvements, is shown as $831,300, which is the value we're reviewing this afternoon. But as indicated by Mr. Lovenstein, he has removed the physical area, a couple of thousand square feet, I believe it was, of the second floor storage, resulting in a slightly lower value. But as I understood him to answer, no allowance has been made with respect to the 2 bins and the impact on the site. So at the bottom of page 7, the additional obsolescence factor that we're suggesting, the second floor warehouse has resulted in 2 of the wheat storage bins being removed. That, we are told by our client, reduces the storage capacity by about 20%. Important to note, and I want to be very fair with this, that 20% reduction, they've managed to maintain their total throughput despite that reduction in the storage capacity. But what it does mean is that on a daily basis, there's more inputs and there's more moves essentially that have to be made in order to keep the throughput at the same level, and that is definitely an inefficiency and a higher cost. So that element of depreciation we're suggesting at the bottom of page 7 should result in additional functional obsolescence factor of no less than 5%. If you take the 5% of the replacement cost new, that equals $139,520, and that is the factor that we're suggesting should be removed. The question I posed to Mr. Lovenstein was whether the actual bins had been removed by the department, and he, as I recall, said no. I haven't actually accounted for that because I thought they had. So I haven't accounted for the physical removal of the bins, which also should come off the top, but I'm not going to change my, because I don't have those details as far as what the RCNLD of those bins would be. I'm not going to change my value, but that is certainly something that will deserve some further discussion at a different time. So the total RCNLD, once we take the additional 5%, is instead of 567,000, or sorry, 557,300 as shown on the chart on page 7, we're suggesting that should be reduced further to 427,780. So that is the RCNLD that will apply in our valuation. Then as to the land value, going now to page 8. The department's model had kicked out a rate of $988 a square foot, but we're suggesting that's far too optimistic. We're suggesting a rate of $5 a square foot based on the sales data that we present, the chart that we present, most notably 89 Higgins, which was a parcel, admittedly a larger parcel. That parcel was 55,800 feet, but it sold in February of 15 for $376 a square foot with the same zoning. We certainly believe that is a very valid indicator. Now, the index number 4, the Jarvis property, that is the same property that Mr. Lovenstein had also submitted. So that's 2 of the same properties. Then I've got other properties on Wall, Hutchings, and Burroughs. Hutchings is a very large property, so certainly in terms of size, it wouldn't be comparable. as also Burroughs is a very much larger parcel of land. So the Higgins, by virtue of its location, we believe is very relevant, and the Wall and the Jarvis properties, we'd suggest also provide valid indicators. But given the location of the subject in Point Douglas, we're suggesting a rate of $5 a square foot, accounting for the smaller size, but the very close proximity to the sale at 89 Higgins. So using the $5 rate, and now I note in my total value calculation towards the bottom of page 8, the detached structure value that we've used is $20,000, and I believe in Mr. Lovenstein's brief this afternoon, it's actually gone down to 18,000. But I'm going to stick with the 20. I'm not going to make that adjustment either at this stage. So the suggested value, taking all of that into account, is $571,000. As far as the appendices, the printouts of the maps and confirmation of the addresses of the land sales are attached. I won't go through them. I'll leave that for the board's reference. And again, though, if you turn to our page 11, that's also the site map for the subject property. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lemon. Mr. Lovenstein, do you have any questions?
Thank you. So you agree with our methodology and how we value this property and the cost approach?
I don't disagree with using the cost approach, no.
So basically, you've taken our value and applied a 5% reduction because of reconstruction.
Well, no, actually, the replacement cost, actually, I should have mentioned that. It's in my page 7. The cost to remedy the deficiencies relating to the bins is over $2.5 million. So they're not going to be spending $2.5 million on this site. So I haven't taken the bins out. I thought they were actually removed. What I'm saying is because of the 20% reduction in storage capacity, now you've got to have far more frequent deliveries. You've got inefficiencies, and those inefficiencies would relate not to physical obsolescence, but it's a functional obsolescence factor that I'm suggesting should be 5%.
So I don't ever recall us talking about the bins, but I can state that they have 18 grain bins have been moved from our database, so we're not validating.
Okay, so you think the 2 have been removed then?
All 18 grain bins that we had in our database for detached structures have been, so there are bins for us now.
So you haven't assessed them?
We haven't assessed them.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine. Then actually that stands. Then there would be no further adjustment needed if you've taken them out.
So if we've taken them out, then it really shouldn't even be a 5% functional obsolescence factor because they're not even in the value, right?
No, absolutely wrong. Because Mr. Lovenstein, with respect, you're equating the deduction to a physical obsolescence. This is functional obsolescence. It's got nothing to do with the physical bins. It's got
yourself that they're through, but the amount of product they have coming through hasn't changed at all.
It has not, but it cost them instead of whatever, pick a number, instead of $20 a ton, it's now costing them closer to $30 a ton because of the extra work and the input, and that is definitely a functional obsolescence factor. Absolutely.
So for your land values or your land comparables on page 8, zoning has a factor. You say zoning has a factor for the sale price of land value?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what is the zoning of this property?
It's M1.
M1. So all your comparables are M2.
They are indeed. Higher zoning, better zoning.
Would M1 not be the better zoning?
No.
This allows for more processing, different things, where M1 is very specific on what.
M2 provides more flexibility. You can get more intensive use. So no, actually, I'd suggest it would be the reverse. M2 would provide a heavier zoning than M1. Everything you can do in M1, you can do in M2, but in M2, you can also do additional things that you cannot do in M1. So I'd suggest you goes the other way.
What can you do additionally in M2 that you can't do?
I didn't submit that, but I'm telling you, if you have evidence that M2 zoning is less, or that, sorry, I'll rephrase it. If you have evidence that M1 zoning is less restrictive than M2, I'd love to see that because I don't believe that to be the case.
And so you stated that some of my comparables were too small for the subject property. Your comparables are all quite a bit larger than the subject property, Jarvis one. Do you think that's the reason why your values are so much lower?
Actually, as I mentioned in my submission, Mr. Lovenstein, they are all, and admittedly, in terms of the Hutchings one, that's a very large parcel, that would have limited relevance. But when you've got a sale just up the street at 89 Higgins for a parcel that is admittedly larger, which I also said, that though, we're not talking about 24,000 versus 300,000 feet. It's a parcel that's double in size right in that area, and that I'm suggesting provides an excellent indicator. We've adjusted for the size by suggesting $5 a foot rather than $3.76 a foot, which is what that parcel traded. But yes, absolutely, size is something you need to adjust for. Totally agree.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lowenstein.
I think my questions have all been answered now.
Mr. Riddle? I have a question about your comparables. Maybe I should have asked this of the assessor as well. Do these comparables also have rail access?
89 Higgins, let's look at that. I think 89 Higgins would. So if we go to, yes, it would indeed. So if we go to page, and please ignore the marker handwritten page numbers at the bottom right. That's not, it's page 16, which is the 16 and 17. So these are the details of the Higgins transaction. And specifically, if you go to page 17, the rail line goes right to the north part of that property. I really believe that's by far and away the best indicator that either one of us have presented. It's right up the street and it's got the rail access.
So that's a influence, but is there direct access?
Oh, sure, because the rail line's going right behind it.
Okay, I
Yep.
just didn't.
Yep, you bet. Yep.
Okay,
They would need to build a spur line.
Oh,
They need a line into the building.
well, the build, there is absolutely, that's absolutely right. So it's got, yep, no question about that. But they could do it. It's right, like the rail line is right there. Yep.
they can do it,
Can't
but
access
they
that
don't have it
direct.
now.
Right.
They'd have to build something.
Yeah, they'd have to put the spur on. Absolutely.
Okay, this one has direct access. It's along the rail line, right?
They have
Their
their own line.
own line. Okay. There's no spur line, or there is a spur line?
There is a spur.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you all very
Mr.
much.
Renner.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And that concludes our hearing today.